Okay, thank you all very much for being here for the junior scenario performance finals. The competition's growing year by year. We had to have the middles quite separately, 17 people. We've now got, I think it's 9 juniors and 9 seniors who'll be sort of following on from this, so it's growing extremely well. Just a few points. Please don't video your own child. There's actually a legal reason why, and that comes from the top. Basically, our lawyers say we have the permission through the arrangement with our own cameras and so on to take pictures, but not parents. Don't ask me the ins and outs of the legal situation, but it's being live streamed and recorded. We know it works because it worked really well with the middles. It's also being videoed. Yeah, all right, so it'll be very, very soon after the performance. So you'll be able to actually see your students and children in that way. Just to remind you, look, this is the newest of the options that FPSPI offers. Began 2015 and began in Australia, where it was designed particularly for students who either had trouble, if you like, articulating their thinking in writing, so children with dyslexia and so on, give them a chance, but also for students from cultures where oral traditions were very strong. This is about storytelling, not story writing. So the restrictions are things like you can't use your body, you can use your hands, but it's mainly in your voice and the way you actually convey the story that way. They use, throughout the year, they will use the topics that are used for scenario writing. When it comes to IC, about 4 or 5 weeks before IC, they get a special instruction based on the topics. So that topics criminal justice, they got a set of, if you like, more specific instructions as to the kind of direction they would be allowed to take in their story, and that's what they've done. So their stories have been written and prepared to be told within only 4 or 5 weeks, and that's part of the actual challenge. Please, I suppose, focus on what the students are saying as much as anything else. What else do I have to tell you? They've got 5 minutes to complete their performance. I'll be holding up a red folder at 4 minutes 30. I'm also doing the timekeeping, and then they'll finish. There are penalties for going over 5 minutes. They can only use up to 10 cue cards. They don't have to use cue cards, and many of them are not. And last of all, that's basically it. So, can we give all our finalists a big hand of applause because they reached this stage? And if student number 3, who is the first, can go up on stage and prepare, we'll get things underway.
Let me tell you a story that took place 20 years ago. I burst through the doors of my school breathing in the fresh air of the outside. Or at least it was fresh air compared to my school's sweaty mildew smell. Outside smelled like plastic because the flowers and the grass and the trees, they were all made out of plastic. It didn't help much that our city was surrounded in a plastic dome either. My mom had once told me when I was little the government had put up the plastic dome to keep our ideas inside of ourselves so we would only listen to their ideas. The dome was tinted so there could be 1,000 people outside of the dome, all being able to see us, and we wouldn't be able to see them. I looked up at the stormy gray sky of the dome as it changed to an ocean shimmering blue. It did this at least once a day, and it was my favorite part of the day. I grabbed my hoverboard and turned onto L Street, the street next to the street running along the dome. Soon I passed a stop and got off. I saw all my friends muttering to each other. I went up to one of my friends. "Hey Carson," I said, "do you have the key?" He nods. "Yeah," he said. Carson's mom, like my mom, works for the government, but unlike my mom, his mom has a contact lens, permitting her to go in and out of the dome whenever the government wishes her to. He had stolen it from her the night before. He put it in his eye and came to the dome, and he was about to open it when we heard sirens blaring through the city. Everyone screamed, running as fast as they could away. I ran towards the alley very fast, but I tripped on a rock, and my ankle hurt really bad. Help, I screamed, "Help, someone to help me!" But no one did. I heard drones buzzing behind my head. They were coming. I felt dizzy, and then everything went black. My head hurt so bad. So did my ankle. I felt something scratchy on my cheek. I looked up. It was grass. It was real grass. I looked around. I was in about a 1-acre lot that was surrounded by a wooden fence. The wooden fence was surrounded by barbed wire that looked like it might be electric. Inside of this plot, there was a shelter where there was goats, and then there was a pile of carrot seed packets. I saw a knothole on one of the fences and went in and looked at it. I looked through it and saw that between my fence and another fence, there was a walkway where the policemen must patrol. On the fence across from me, there was another knothole, and I looked through it. I saw another girl through it. She had a pixie cut, and she had purple hair. "Hey," she said, "my name's Evelyn." "Hi," I said, "my name's Mia." "So, how did you get in?" she asks. "I tried to escape the dome," I say. "And how did you?" That's confidential," she says. "Oh," I say. "So, how did you escape the dome? I mean, how did you get caught?" I asks. "Well, how do we all get caught?" she says. "When it turns from that gray color to the light blue, that's when the cameras go on. They can see you throughout the city and see every crime that happens when the cameras are on." "Oh," I say. "So, what do we do at these rehabilitation camps?" "So," she says, "you just have a group of animals to take care of and a crop. And I'd get back to work if I were you, because the overseer is coming pretty soon." I wiped the sweat from my forehead. I'm not really sure how long I've been here, a week or month. It could be either. I was tired and I'd finished all my chores, so I sat down when I heard a "Mia Hirsch!" I jumped up. A law enforcement officer came in with a circular black device. He set it down on the ground and said, "You have a visitor." He left. I looked at it. And then, "Mia? Mom! Mom, it's you!" Even though Mom was in a hologram and she was like a greenish color, I could see clearly that her dark brown hair was turning gray and she had circles under her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Mia," she said. "I missed you, but things have been crazy at work." "I know, Mom," I say. She asks how things have been. I tell her how it was hard adjusting, but now I'm adjusted now. "You know, Mia," she says, "I'll try really, really hard to get you out." "I know, Mom," I say. She smiles sadly. "And when I do, and when you do get out, you know where I'll be." "Yeah," I said, nodding. "Under the plastic dome."
Sirens blared, lighting the building with flashes of blood red and cobalt blue. All windows and doors slammed closed, remotely controlled by a Secura 12's holophone. Valen groaned, silently cursing 2032's advanced technology. Soon they'd send in a police-grade Ellison collector, which would arrest any criminals and light copy evidence, such as Valen's bag of stolen goods. As far as proving someone guilty went, this was a pretty foolproof method. Sprinting past smashed windows and dented walls, Valen could see just as many injured or unconscious thieves as staff and civilians. Valen doubted it was the staff that had wounded the criminals. Most likely they had fought among themselves. In a world where 70% of all crime or even day-to-day activity was executed online, physical items were extensively coveted. One of the Ellison's small detector drones buzzed around Valen's head, letting out a piercing alarm call as it scanned her face. Sighing, Valen begrudgingly followed the drone out of the building. Being caught by the actual Ellison would be far less pleasant. Once outside, Valen was handcuffed by 2 human policemen. She didn't struggle. It would have resulted in an electric shock, knocking Valen unconscious and possibly adding time to her sentence. Dark circles surrounding her eyes, Valen walked into the courtroom at 7 a.m., though it was almost 30 minutes before everyone arrived and the judge commenced the trial. Valen knew she would lose. She hadn't had access to enough money to afford a quality lawyer, and there was an abundance of incriminating evidence. As soon as the crowd quietened, the judge introduced itself. After this, a tall man in an immaculate black suit tapped something on his desk, opening a hologram of the building's owner, Mr. Vaz, who had apparently been taken hostage during the theft. Looking quite flustered, DeVaz began recounting her experience, saying she had been threatened and then knocked out. Toward the end, the woman started fake crying. She couldn't have known she was being judged by an AI, which didn't exactly look at the witnesses. It would have no understanding of her whining. Cross-examining the thieves took the longest. The prosecution asked for motives as if it would help. Most people didn't know that almost all judges were digital, and the court wanted to keep it that way. After the second last person had presented their evidence and been questioned by both the prosecution and the defense through the sandbox, the room darkened. Furniture withdrew into cavities in the walls, clearing the room as light screens were activated. An analyst presented his report as the augmented reality took effect, transporting the crowd to the crime scene. However, the evidence had obviously been altered. Places had been blurred where Valen had clearly seen injured criminals during the theft. As the light screens turned off and normality returned, the judge presented his reasoning and verdict. The evidence was irrefutable. Valen was obviously guilty. You, Valen Lloyd, are sentenced to 5 years at Colon Prison for theft. You will be released in 2037. The judge's voice echoed through the courtroom. What? Valen exclaimed. I stole on 3 different occasions to survive. And I get 5 years in a top security prison? That's not fair. At least consider motive. But Valen knew that wasn't possible. Not when you were being judged by a machine. The government said the system was perfect. AI couldn't give lighter sentences to friends or family or get away with bending the rules. But no matter how much programming was hammered in, no matter how much paint was plastered on, machines would never be people.
I became a judge to give the meek and the quiet a chance to have a voice. One chance for it all to be fair, and maybe, just maybe, the loudest don't always win. With my job, one decision I make can affect the whole future of someone else's life. If I go yes instead of no, right instead of wrong. With my job, I can either change their life forever or completely destroy it. This morning, when I woke up, I did my usual routine. Told my auto alarm to snooze about twice, asked my weatherscape what the weather was and what outfit I should wear. July 17th, 2044. Feels like 72 degrees outside. The purple dress would be nice. Got in my holocar, of course checked my reflection to make sure my dress wasn't wrinkled at all, and went to work. Something just didn't feel right in the air. It was like the whole world had stopped, waiting for me to do something. I couldn't figure out what it was. My office was different too. No one said hi, good morning, or how are you? My secretary hardly even looked at me. What could this case be about? My big black chair was pulled up for me in the big black room, or so I call it. It had beige walls, beige floors, and beige tables. To the right of me was a long line of tables where the jury sat, and in front of me were two tables where the opposers and the defenders sat. Finally, I get to take a look at what this case is. Mr. Mark Jonathan Anthony, accused of stealing money from Bayview Elementary School. Wife, Madeline Anthony. One daughter, Riley Anthony, with lawyer Simon Walls. A small family walked into the room wearing clothes you might not usually see to go to a courthouse. The wife had a long, flowy pink top that was faded around the edges. But when her long brown hair flowed in her face and the way she looked at her daughter made her so beautiful. The father was an assiduous man who was unremitting at his work. He was going to do anything it took to provide for his family. But I'll never forget the look on the little girl's face as she walked into the terrifying room. She was wearing a light purple dress, much like mine, and was carrying a small stuffed bunny very close to her heart. Every now and then, she would furtively glance at her mom as to say, "Are we going to be okay?" Her mom would give a nice, warm, gentle smile back. Everyone, please be seated. Opposer, Principal Weber of Bayview Elementary School. Please state your case. I have security camera proof that this man was in the school at night on the computer, and in the morning we had a significantly low drop in the budget. Thank you. Defender, please state your case. Look, I may look like I need money, but I would never do anything to steal from a child's education, much less my own daughter. My evidence is this little girl right here. You think I would take away from her education, from our family? I couldn't help but feel sorry for them. If I made the wrong decision, either the court system wouldn't be fair, or everything would be taken from them. Mr. Anthony, you are the only one that could have committed the crime because you were in the building. Look, I don't know why you think I was in the building, but I don't think it's the reason you think. I'm the night janitor of the school. When I was cleaning in the library, a computer just happened to be left on. I decided to take a look at it and see what the toy cost that my little girl really wants for her birthday. I'm not that kind of man that would steal. Besides, even if I wanted to, I couldn't.
Only the board of directors, the president of the board of directors, and the principal have security password access. All of a sudden, the principal's phone started vibrating and flashing. He reached for the phone, trying to grab it across the desk, trying to silence it. But it was too late. The message that decided everything had already been spoken. Touch ID accepted. Your transfer from Bayview Elementary School has been complete. Thank you.
Your Honour, Anna Amoyles, in closing on behalf of the defendants, Mr. Andrew and Mrs. Jane Johnson. As the jury is well aware, we have been wrestling with the facts of this tragic case for over 9 months as we seek to determine who is culpable for the death of James Lynn. Through my closing argument, I will demonstrate that it is certainly not the defendants who are to blame, but in fact our society, which has given inappropriate powers to systems such as the OmniView network and has placed undue reliance on these systems to keep us safe. I will now return to the facts of that traumatic night. On June 7th, 2038, Mr. Andrew Johnson, aged 82, and his wife, Jane Johnson, aged 78, finished their dinner at the Imperial Diner. Being of frail health, the defendants then ordered an express breeze to drive them home, as they would usually do. The XB arrived at 8:40 p.m. and was en route to their home when it tragically hit James Lynn, aged 12. As the prosecution have argued, the defendants were watching the news on a holographic screen and thus were unaware of James Lynn as he crossed the road. Consequently, they were unable to override the XB before it was too late. However, these facts are irrelevant as effective January 1st, 2030, the law of the state of New York removed any occupant's responsibilities for controlling a driverless bug. Instead, the defendants were relying on the XB's state-of-the-art multi-sensors and software, which failed to alert them of the obstacle in their path, and more critically, failed to stop immediately as programmed. Furthermore, the OmniView network, whose sole purpose is to monitor, anticipate, and prevent accidents, completely failed in its responsibility to anticipate the accident and deactivate the XB in order to prevent the collision. With the introduction, we acknowledge the horrific loss of James Lynn's parents, Janet and Stephen Lynn. We grieve with them, but we cannot begin to imagine the trauma of the last 9 months and the years to come. However, I hereby submit that the defendants are just as innocent as James Lynn. With the introduction of the OmniView network, we as citizens have given up significant civil liberties, and our rights to privacy have been severely eroded. In 2038, it seems almost impossible to move in any public space without being seen, monitored, and recorded. Accordingly, it seems absurd to even contemplate holding the defendants responsible for this tragedy. I put it to you
that if the tragic and fatal collision between the Expressbury's and James Lynn had occurred not after Mr. and Mrs. Johnston had been collected from the Imperial Diner, but while the XB was en route to collect them, they would not be required to project themselves here today through our well-developed system of augmented reality. Furthermore, one would not hold them liable for this event simply because they had ordered a state-of-the-art transportation pod to take them home. We have lived in a digital world for nearly 3 decades, and yet we have failed to establish the correct balance of power between technology and human beings. As a society, we urgently need to carefully reconsider the role and power which we have transferred to technology. The laws of our society have allowed AI to operate autonomously. We cannot then place accountability on innocent users and citizens. Undeniably, the blame evidently lies with the leaders of our society. We urgently need to make a change.
The United Nations have finally created a 100% secure prison for all the most horrific criminals around the world. The new 2038 prison pods have just been manufactured and are being held 4,000 feet above the Arctic Ocean by the most powerful magnetic force in the world. Criminals will be assigned to a specific pod according to gender and the crime that the individual had committed. Criminals are sure to see justice. Hello, hoe gaan dit? Mijn naam is Johan Kotsier. Hello, how are you? My name is Johan Kotsier. The life of a farmer in South Africa is no easy life. My blood and sweat fertilized the lands in which I worked, sometimes laboring for up to 12 hours in the scorching hot sun. I had a responsibility to feed my family. I had inherited this land from my father, and he from the generations before him. But one night, 6 men attacked us in the dark. They attacked with machetes. I fought back with every ounce of brute strength I had gained from my years of farming, killing one of them with my bare hands, before the rest overpowered me. They wrapped their hands around me and dragged me through my land. At that moment, I was convinced I would never see life past 2038. But the men had another plan for me. They brought me here, to the floating prison in the blue sky where only the worst of offenders are sent. Cold-blooded murderers, the judge said. Like me. Of course the government was not going to help, seeing as how they, in 2018, wrote the proclamation into law. All farmlands belonging to white South African farmers can be seized without compensation. My first few days in my prison, I spent my days screaming and trying to explain. But no one was listening to me, and the robot guards' metal ears were deaf to my pleas. This automated prison system is inhumane due to no human contact at all. So now, in 2048, 10 years into serving my lifetime sentence, I understand that this dungeon in the sky will be my forever home, and that any attempt to escape will land me thousands of feet below into the icy Arctic Ocean. Assalamu alaikum, ismi Nadia Hussein. Peace be with you. My name is Nadia Hussein. But I have no peace. I was only 13 at the time, a young, carefree girl living in a small village in Saudi Arabia. It happened so suddenly. How could it be right? How could any 13-year-old girl be forced to marry a 60-year-old man? especially one she has never met before. I understood my family's desperation for money, but this was a cruel and unfair demand. The years prior, I saw my friends get married in the same way. There should be safeguards in place to protect young women's civil liberties. I remember my friends' tears. None of these Saudi girls chose this life, but they had let it happen to them, either way. Not me. I thought I was different, stronger and smarter. I actually convinced myself that I had the right to choose who I will love, and that no one could make me marry this man. It was 2018 after all, and the new king of Saudi Arabia had promised great improvements for his country, people, and especially us women. So, the night before my wedding, I ran for my life. Didn't know where, but I knew the consequence of my actions would end in an honor killing by my family. I was right. My last memories of life outside of these prison walls were the tears running down my cheeks as my family caught up with me. They showed me no mercy. They spat on me and beat me till I was nearly dead before they called the authorities to drag me out of their sight. For 20 years, I was locked up in a filthy city jail cell. But now in 2038, with the new prison pods, I was dragged here, to this floating prison in the never-ending sky, with a robot guard as my only contact. Hebe Mauti, this is my death. What quality of life is this? Isolation, with robot guards as our only contact. I never imagined that being a farmer would be illegal. I never thought that wanting freedom would be illegal. Dit is mirachni. Hadi hu laysa ta'adalatin. This isn't justice. Thank you.
January 16th, 2048. Digital Diary of the Director of the U.S. Department of Civil Liberties, Leah Lysoni. People said that we could get to Mars by 2030, but we didn't. Why would we? Life was good on Earth. People were starting to use more renewable resources, and the Go Green campaigns were becoming more and more popular. There was no sense exploring and colonizing an unknown planet if we didn't have to. But it isn't 2030 anymore. This is 2048, and people all across the planet are unpacking their things after an 8-month journey to Mars. You see, the Earth can no longer sustain humans because 2 years ago, the supervolcano sitting underneath what used to be Yellowstone wiped out half of the world and all of its resources. Most of the world's water evaporated because of the immense heat, and there was a year-long drought. Plus, everything in the northern hemisphere had been reduced to cinders. What had happened was that 3 eco-friendly philanthropists had invested in a geothermal power plant to promote green energy usage. And to get that much energy, they had to go somewhere really, really hot and really, really big. So they drilled a hole in the Yellowstone caldera and caused an eruption that blew up practically half of the globe. Of course, these people were punished severely. As everyone loaded their things onto the supersonic spacecraft that would take us to our new homes, the 3 philanthropists were forced to stay on Earth, condemned to endure the terrible conditions on the planet that they destroyed. I was against this. After all, it was my job to protect civil rights. This is horrible, I said to anyone who would listen. People shouldn't be left to die on an uninhabitable planet just because they were trying to do business. But no,
no one would listen to me because I didn't have the power to oppose the government, the world. I stood alone, fighting for these people who were to suffer such a terrible fate, all because no one else had the courage to fight for what was right, all because no one else wanted to suffer the same fate as those 3 businessmen. Everyone opposed my viewpoint. It's too dangerous, they said. If you don't comply with the UN's decision, then you'll be left here too. Didn't these people understand? I was willing to risk being left behind on Earth if it meant that these 3 men didn't have to suffer at the hands of 2048's strict criminal justice system. Night fell, and I hopped in my hover car and drove across town. I found the house that I was looking for. The owner was Catherine Zane, the High Commissioner of Civil Rights at the UN. I snuck into the house, found the master bedroom, and extracted a syringe from my pocket. I then stuck it into the sleeping UN commissioner. I scanned her face in my disguise master and instantly took her form. I then hopped back into my hover car and drove to the town hall just as the sun rose. I initiated the hollow conference with the UN Assembly to let them know of our final verdict. The meeting commenced, and I spoke first. After a lengthy and persuasive argument about the due process of law and civil rights, I sat down. Everyone gave me a standing ovation. My plan was working. Just then, the doors burst open, and the real UN High Commissioner stormed through the doors. "She's an imposter!" she shouted. Everyone froze. I took advantage of their shock and ran out onto the streets. Suddenly, a bright flash, an electric shock, and darkness. The next thing I saw was red. The smell of iron oxide filled my lungs, and to my horror, I realized I was on Mars, never to return to the blue planet I once called home.
It all started when the U.S. passed that piece of legislation known as the Off-Planet Prisons Act in the year of 2030. Things changed that instead of killing death row inmates, they would be sent off to jails in space. The government promised that these places would only be for the worst of the worst. No escape, no visitations, no privileges. But those policies slowly became no basic human rights. People liked the space jails. It was solving a problem. At the time, there was a huge uproar over the death penalty, as rates of innocent people executed had skyrocketed. While in 2018, the rates of wrongfully convicted people on death row were about 4.1%, that had increased almost threefold to about 12% by 2030. The Justice Department believed that this law would stop things like this from happening, as it would allow prisoners to have more time to appeal, more time to prove their innocence, more justice. The U.S. established the first off-planet prison 2 years after. 3 months later, they sent the first inmates there. That was the biggest news until now, 2040, when officials sent the first group of people convicted of non-violent felonies to the space jails due to prison overpopulation on Earth. I was one of them. How could this get support? I guess it's because none of them know what it's like up here. Nothing but a huge human rights violation. They promised inmates' 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment rights would be protected, but they almost never accept appeals. And even then, they rarely come back to pick up the innocents, making it a violation of due process. Not just that, they never enforce safety standards, much less perform routine maintenance. The facility has started to degrade due to background cosmic radiation. And if it's doing this to the prison, imagine what it's doing to us inmates. I had to escape here, or my 10-year sentence would become a death sentence. There was a ventilation shaft in the corner of my cell. It was reinforced with carbon fiber. I suspected that the carbon fiber would be weak due to the radiation from space. There could be a way out. I began to plot. I needed acetone. To help make parole, I volunteered with the janitorial detail to help clean up the place. They trusted me as one of the non-violent offenders. They used paint remover, which contains acetone, to clean up graffiti and bad stains. I started smuggling small capfuls of it back to my cell. I could use it to further weaken the carbon fiber panel. Also from my work on the cleaning crew, I noted where the escape pods were located. After accumulating about a liter of acetone, I assumed I had enough. I soaked one of my socks in the acetone and began to press it onto the shaft cover. Soak, rub, press. Soak, rub, press. When I finally felt the panel starting to give, I punched out a small hole. From there, I slowly cracked it open to the point where it was just big enough for me to fit through. Time to move. While moving through the ventilation system, I heard a sound, a siren, blaring from seemingly everywhere inside of the shaft. I knew what this meant. The robot guards knew that somebody was missing. The escape pods would be on lockdown. I had to get to the control room to activate the emergency protocol so that I could escape. It was my only option. I had to go fast as they were tracking me with my biochip. Once I got to the control room, I found the emergency panel and activated it. The lockdown sirens turned off, replaced with equally loud emergency sirens. Not much time left before order would be restored. I had to move fast. I got back into the vents and headed towards the escape pods. My knees ached as I crawled, moving as quickly as possible. Finally, I reached the corridor of the escape pods and got into one. I pressed the emergency launch button and hoped that I wasn't too late. The launch sequence initiated. 10, 9, 8. I thought about getting back to Earth. 7, 6, 5. What's the worst that could happen? I could be sent back here, but that would require a trial, and I could finally speak up about the human rights violations occurring here. 3, 2, 1. My heart pounded. A quick jolt in the pod shot out of the corridor and began falling towards the Earth. Goodbye to that cruel mess of a prison. Somebody had to stop these awful off-planet prisons for good and restore equal rights for all citizens. Your Honor, I would like to plead my case.
Testing. Yes, PG number 6. December 5th,
2047, the day I will make my mark on the city of Megagon. Only 22 minutes now. My plan should be working just fine. I delivered my biological radiation bomb package to a small abandoned house in the heart of Megagon, right next to the biggest hotel in our city, Hotel Red Panther. And now I know that when my plan is successful and Hotel Red Panther blows up, thousands of citizens will gather up around the hotel, crying in pain over the loss of so many poor people's lives. What they won't know, though, is that I will be hiding that crowd, and I will feast on that pain and those tears until my hunger is satisfied. Just 2 months ago, I got pushed back into the real world. I was released from 3 years in juvenile jail, all those terrible nights where I cried. Not missing my family, but unable to give pain to others due to being forced into isolation. But now, in just a few minutes, nothing can stop me from becoming my true self again. As I anxiously waited, a news reporter popped up on the holoboards encasing the city. Good evening, Megagon, and now for a short update about our crimometric chip system. It is a tool that the criminal justice system uses. It utilizes profiles of all of the individuals in a certain area and their past criminal record. It can also use their GPS finder satellite device embedded in the crimometric chip implanted in everyone's parietal cortex. It assists the officials in setting various kinds of mental traps to catch the criminals. Thanks to our DCCC, Digital Center for Crime Control's outstanding efforts, everyone in Megagon has now gone through the chip implant surgery and is a part of our secured system. I was unaware of this invention since I'd just been released from juvenile jail, but vaguely remembered going through a short medical procedure while being incarcerated. Suddenly, comprehending the DCCC's ability to track me, I ran, my bare feet pounding painfully on the hard cemented ground, not knowing which direction I was heading, just wanting to be free. I nullified my pain by reminding myself about the bioblast and all the happiness I could absorb by watching people howl in pain. Suddenly, a voice reverberated in my head through the crimometric chip. Stop, otherwise we have the power to put you in a state of mental imprisonment, and we can completely shut down your brain until you are in our custody. It was like a piercing blade slicing through all my brain's flesh. First, we got a call from an old lady that lives adjacent to the abandoned house, saying that a girl around your age dropped off a package by the front door, despite nobody living there. We then used our crimometric chip system to track down the profiles of all the individuals in the area at that time, and your GPS finder satellite tracker was moving away from that area. Therefore, we knew that you were the one suspect with the highest probability of committing this crime. Our detection technology then detected and diffused your bioradiation bomb. Knowing that there was no point in running, that the DCCC have captured my mind, I stopped and listened as they forcefully started a mental interrogation session. Did you try to commit this crime? Yes, I tried to commit this crime. I wanted to see people die by the bioradiation bomb that I created. Why would you find such sadistic pleasure in committing crimes? And haven't you learned from your past imprisonment? You answered your own question. You are talking to a person with sadistic personality disorder. My brain is only pleased if it sees people going through agony, but all that you can see in me is a criminal, not a person in need of psychological rehabilitation. Besides, if you really cared, you could have treated my mental illness, and maybe I might have gotten a chance to be a normal person. It then dawned on the official that the criminal justice system has developed so greatly in the fields of technology being used to track criminals that it has completely missed out on the real essence of mankind. I continued. Congratulations! Your great crimometric chip system has caught me, and you will punish me again. You catch me, but do you care to cure me? Besides, you don't even know how my brain works. Even after 3 years in juvenile jail, your justice system was so caught up in punishing me that I still remain a threat to your society. If care and rehabilitation are not placed equal to law codes and technology, criminals like me will never receive justice.
It was a beautiful day in Boston, and I was driving on the I-93 with the windows open. I started singing along with the radio. Just a young nut with a quick fuse. I was lightning before the thunder. Lightning and the thunder, thunder. I kept driving along. I heard the newly paved highway with the new sensors supposed to generate energy from cars and do even more were gleaming in the sun. I heard a hissing sound coming from underneath my car. I looked down and saw that my car tires were punctured. Then I looked behind me and I saw a police car was after me. All of a sudden, it multiplied into 6. I heard a booming voice and it said, "Please stop immediately. You are under arrest." I pulled over and stopped on the side of the road. 2 cars pulled up alongside me immediately. I pleaded, "I'm sorry, sir. I apologize for whatever crime I supposedly did." Then I realized something funny about the police officer. He was a robot. Then the RoboCop told me what I had done. "You were driving haphazardly and we are going to go to the police station. That was only because I was reaching for my ex-auto phone, sir." Then the RoboCop went on to explain that our AI criminal justice machine detected a bomb in the car. Then, at the police station, I was made to sit in a jail cell for many hours without proper food or water. Eventually, someone came and took me to my car and started inspecting it, asking me questions about the various parts of the machine. After several hours of this, nothing was found and I was released without even an apology. All they said was that they had sensors on the highway and that the RoboCops immediately started after me and punctured my tires so that I wouldn't be a threat because they detected unapproved materials in my car. But if that's the case, why did they release me? That's only because it was a prototype and we got the information wrong. The man stated curtly and left me. 2 days later, I asked the senator, Josh Bourbon, if he could resolve the problem. He told me, "We're going to suspend the program until it's never going to happen again. We really want this to be fair for all the citizens of our town." Boston. Thank you so much for this. And hey, guess what? It never happened to me again. Thank you.
Okay, so all the juniors are done. Can we give all these wonderful young people a big applause? It's hard enough for adults to be doing that, but when you see young people doing it, it's very rewarding, and well done coaches too. So you'll learn about the results on Sunday, on Sunday morning. Could I ask the juniors to leave as quickly as you can? Please take your rubbish. We've got the seniors waiting to come in and we have to get them organised. But thank you very much.